Everyone should have a phenomenal woman in their life. I met mine in the library. Not in person, but through her books. During my emergence from the closet, I read those books, all 3 of them that the library had, over and over again. In her characters, I found home. Real women who loved women. So imagine my delight as I anticipated the moment I was finally going to meet her in person, because she lives in my town. Oh my God! Big time fangirl! How would I recognize her? I didn't even tell her what I looked like. Devil's in the details. But the moment she walked in the door, I knew this was Penny. We left that day knowing there would be more lunches to come. I was no longer just a fangirl. I was her friend. It is my great pleasure to introduce my friend and kindred spirit, Penny Mickelbury. Penny, in conversation with the board of directors, I mentioned one of the things you told me at lunch was how you liked Afghans. So, one of my little chipper board members, we put it in her action plan. And she made you an Afghan throw on behalf of GCLS.
Wow. Wow. Y'all are gonna make it hard for me to go home. This is all right. Y'all are all right. Before I agreed to do this, I had lots of thoughts. The primary one being, I really don't like giving speeches. I really don't. And the Sisters in Crime chapter in Atlanta had a session with a woman who teaches writers how to give speeches, because they know that we really are happiest in our little spaces, creating the characters and with our plots and our settings, because that's our real world. I mean, that's real for us. But she said you can't do that because your readers want to know you. And my response to that is, but why? But why? And she said, no, I'm going to give you some tools to help you, to relax you, so that you can go do this and have fun. So I said, okay, I'm sitting here with a room full of other writers, and we're all having the same expression upon our faces, like, yeah, right. So she said, one of the things that really helps me is you look out at your audience and you imagine them naked. And I'm thinking to myself, she's getting ready to send me into a room full of women and telling me to imagine them naked. It might make me happy, but it ain't going to relax me. The next thing she said was, don't write your speech. Because if you do that, what will happen is you'll be standing at the podium doing this, and you won't be looking out at all the naked people. So I'm looking out, and I'm really, really working on not thinking about you being naked. And wondering why most of you didn't figure out that you had something else to do in this time period so that I could stand here and pretend to be cool and relaxed. you have made me feel that way since I've been here, relaxed anyway. And Mary Phillips says such nice things about me, and I guess I'm going to have to write that check or make lunch is on me next time. I can do that. I can even make it dinner, Mary. Thank you. I thank you, and I thank the board for not only the opportunity, but for creating an environment that is welcoming and that makes this possible, that continues to make it possible for me and all of the rest of my sister writers to do what we do. The road to here has been long, but not necessarily difficult, because I know that many writers have had a much harder time getting published. First of all, just writing, having the time and the space to write, and then being able to get published. And I've always written. I was a reporter in my first life, which gave me the basis for almost all of my stories in the Mimi Jana series and the Carol Ann Gibson series and in the Phil Rodriguez series. I write 3 mystery series. But the Mimi Jana series was the first and closest to my heart. When I was a young reporter, I was fortunate enough to get a job at the Washington Post at the age of 23, which in hindsight was fairly amazing. But when you're 23, you don't think anything is amazing. You think that, we now think that the millennials is like, God, they feel entitled. Well, yeah, they do, but when you're 23, you're supposed to. And the people offered me a job, and I said, yeah, here I come. I'm on my way. I had been the first black reporter at the Athens, Georgia Banner Herald, and then the Washington Post called, and so I went. I'd been there about a month, maybe, when the body of a young girl was found along the freeway, I-95. I didn't know it at the time, but she had not been the first. And the press, as the press is wont to do, had dubbed that series of incidents the Freeway Phantom. The editor says to me, go over there across the river, talk to the mother, ask her how she feels. And I looked at him, I'm 23 now, and he's an editor at the Washington Post. And I'm not anybody's mother, but I have a mother. And I'm thinking to myself, how is it you think she feels? They pulled her kid's body, and this is a kid, 7, 8 years old, off the freeway. She's murdered, mutilated, and you want me to ask her how she feels? Yeah, across the river. And in Washington speak, that does not mean the Potomac River, it means the Anacostia River. And across the Anacostia River is where we live. So I did know enough about being a reporter, even at 23, to know that you don't refuse an assignment. So I went and got one of the raggedy-ass news cars and found my way across the river. And for you youngsters, that was in the days before GPS and cell phones, and you had to get a map. And remember, in Washington, a month, 2 at the most, I go across the river, find the house, and I go knock on the door. And I introduce myself, and this woman starts to scream. And I turned around, and I went right back to the raggedy-ass news car, and I got right back in it, and I went back to the paper, and the guy says to me, so what'd she say? I said, she's probably still screaming. And I went to my desk, and I thought, okay, I really didn't come here for this. This is not what I was expecting. Fast forward a few months, I'm assigned to go do a story on the police crackdown on prostitutes. And they send me uptown a little bit to one of those places where we live. And I had not visited that part of town. And to my amazement, there were women walking up and down the street whose profession it was not difficult to surmise. I'm from Georgia. And I'm thinking, whoa, this is really a different place. And I attempted to speak to some of the women, and they blew me off. And one young woman agreed to talk to me. She said, "Are you really a reporter?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And we got to talking. Just a little bit of information here. If any of you have read the Mimi Jana stories, there's a character named Baby Doll. This is Baby Doll. And we were talking, and she said, "How old are you?" And I told her. I said, "How old are you?" And she told me, and I think I was two years older. And she said, "How much money do you earn?" So I told her, and I was pretty proud of it, because, you know, that was a pretty good amount of money. And she looked at me, she said, "I wouldn't get out of bed for that amount of money in the morning." And I thought, wow, okay. But then one of the other women came over and she said, "Why are you talking to us?" And I said, "Well, I was sent here. The editor told me to come do this, to ask because the police are going to have this crackdown." She said, "Why are they cracking down on us? Why aren't they cracking down on the white dudes who drive in here from Maryland and Virginia every day? Because if they didn't come here, we wouldn't be here." I said, that's a pretty good question. So I made it, I said, "Can we talk again? You know, give me your name and number." And they said, no, you can't have my number, but this is where we work. We'll be here. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I work at the Washington Post, they work here. So I went back and I asked the editor, I said, "Why are the police arresting the women and not the Johns who come in from Maryland and Virginia every day?" And the guy looked at me like I was speaking a really foreign language. And he said, "Because if it weren't for the women, the men wouldn't be here." So I'm thinking, I'm learning, I'm getting there. It's the women's fault. It's all the women's fault. So fast forward some more years, and I've done my reporting duty. I'm done. And I moved to New York to be a starving artist. I'm going to write. And the first thing they tell you, one of the first things, is write what you know. So I had been a reporter. I know that. I know Washington, D.C., and I had covered cops and crime in the criminal justice system. And so I thought, okay, a reporter and a cop, that makes sense. That's a good thing to do in mystery writing because they are natural antagonists. But since I also knew the kind of story I wanted to write, I said, that's going to make for pretty good fireworks in a love relationship because the cop is always going to be the cop and the reporter is always going to be the reporter. And they're going to do this because they're going to fight, they're going to fight, they're going to fight until they don't fight. So then I started doing research because I wanted to write about women and women who basically got thrown away, and a lot of those women were prostitutes because cops did not consider them real people. And they were not high on the list of crimes to be investigated. So I started doing research. And what I found was, federally and locally, the cops had no idea how many women went missing every year, but the guess was in the thousands. The thousands. And I hearkened back to the freeway phantom killer and that little girl. Back then, that was what was happening. Men, a man, some men, and this was happening all over the country, that women were being abducted and violated and terrorized and dumped. This has been going on for years. When it finally occurred to the police that they really had a problem, then they started to investigate. And they put out the reports, the feds and the state police, and they said, you know, we really don't know how many. And I included that in, I think it was Night Songs in the Mimi Jana series. And that's when Jana pushed and agitated to her boss to have crimes against women included as a hate crime, because all of these crimes are committed against women because we're women, period, and seen as easy victims. The police department didn't consider them serious crimes, and when Jana got the crimes, these murders from Vice and other, they hadn't even categorized them. And this is based on truth. This is stuff I got from the DC Police Department. It wasn't even categorized. They would just throw the sheets together, and yes, some woman was found over here, and then another one was over there, and one was over there, and were they black? Were they white? Were they Latino? We don't know. Who knows? They just, all this stuff was in a pile. How old are these folk? Don't know. And what follows behind, don't know. You can figure that, don't care. So I'm wanting to be a writer, but I can't not be a woman. I can't not be a woman of color. And I can't not be a lesbian, because I came here all of those things. And it's really hard, number one, to recognize, and number two, to accept that you are hated for everything you are. And not only do they hate you, but they'll hurt you if they can. And nobody cares. Nobody will do anything. They might look for me because I'm not a throwaway woman. Somebody's going to miss me if I turn up gone. But are the police going to investigate any harder because I used to be a reporter and now I'm a starving artist and wannabe writer? Probably not. And that changed and fueled my entire approach to doing this. And I looked at those characters, Mimi and Jana, all of a sudden really differently, because now they're not just characters in a book. These are women who have taken it upon themselves, and there are only two people, but they work in big systems to right some wrongs. Two people in big systems righting some wrongs, which is what all of us are. We're these individual people, and it is incumbent upon us, particularly in this day and time, to understand that we got to right some wrongs, because it's ugly out there. It's ugly out there. And in case you're waiting for me to say his name, I ain't going to say it because I don't speak it. I don't ever say it out loud. I don't ever say it out loud. But we do know that he has unleashed and given voice and freedom to some people who never did go away. They never went away and they never shut up. But because enough of the rest of us were able to get some pieces of the pie, they just went away and were being pissed off by themselves, So, black people could vote, and lesbians and gay men could get married, and for God's sake, transgender, what the hell is that? Wow. Rights? Yeah. Abortion rights? Yeah. All of these things that had been denied to all of these people were now becoming a part of the fabric. We were no longer other. We're here. We're part of this thing. We've always been part of this thing. We just are now able to be fully a part of this thing. And then we elected a black man president. And what did we do that for? Yeah, but look what it got us. Because it was a wonderful thing. And trust me, I never thought in my lifetime, ever, that I would be able to go and vote for a black man or a woman to be president of the United States. I knew it would happen. I just didn't think it would happen when I was still able to walk and think, and breathe. And it did. And we thought they were evil and hateful before. We didn't know. So here we are. And I'm going to do something that I'm going to ask you all to do. I'm going to ask you all to do two things. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm going to do it because I don't just ask people to do things I don't do, and that's step outside your comfort zone. I'm real comfortable back here. I like this and hold on to the thing and pretend that I'm not looking at naked people. No, not naked people, naked women, It's like, I am also a playwright, and I was commissioned to write a 10-minute play. This was in March for a new theater company in Atlanta that honored a woman who had been active in theater as a young woman, and then she stopped acting to raise a family. And then her youngest kid was up and gone, and she went back to the theater. And then she got sick, and she died from one of those brutal ass-kicking cancers that doesn't give you time to think about it, and then she was gone. And her husband said, I don't, and he was in shock. He said, I got to do something to honor her. So he started a theater company. And a friend of mine is one of the directors, and they said, we got one caveat, is that in every play you write, there's got to be a woman over 50. So I wrote this 10-minute piece, and there was this little festival, and both of my women were over 50. In fact, they were 60. And the piece dealt with the fact that here are these two women thinking that they were about to prepare for this wonderful retirement, that life was pretty good. And they were just going to retire and go do stuff, whatever it is we were going to do after we no longer had to show up on somebody's job every day and do what they want you to do. We're going to do what we want to do. And then the election happened. And they're sitting here thinking, we never thought that at this age we would be faced with the things we were faced with in our youth. Why do we have to do this same stuff? Why do we have to have these same conversations over and over and over again about the same stuff? Play got good reception. I'm leaving the venue, and this young man stops me. He said, I want you to know how much your words meant to me. Young white fella, he was probably not 30. I put him in his late 20s. He could have been 30, but I don't think so. He said, everything you said is what I've been feeling. He said, and I want you to understand, I'm not comparing myself to being black. He said, but I have been abused all my life. All my life. People beat up on me and did other things to me until I was old enough to leave that small Alabama town and move to Atlanta. He said, and I got a job. He said, I went to college. He said, I'm in a wonderful relationship, and I know the man that he's married to. He's a fabulous playwright whom I know. He said, and then the election happened. He said, and all those feelings and fears came back. He said, I thought I'd left all of that behind me. And I wake up now terrified. He said, I go out and I'm terrified. If somebody's going to look at me and they're going to see me, and they're not going to see me how I see myself now. He said, they're going to see me as I was, that little boy, and they're going to do things to me. And I looked in the eyes of this young man, and I thought, wow. He just said to me what I have felt all of my life, is how awful it feels to be hated simply because you are who and how you are. Period. So we have become friends. Me and this 20-something white boy. We're friends. And you would think, and I would have thought, what could I possibly have in common? How can I be friends with somebody who's none of your business how many years younger than me, but quite a few. And we do different things, and we live in different parts of town, but what we share is this belief that we have a right to be. And we don't have to explain it to anybody. We don't have to defend ourselves, because he hadn't done anything to hurt anybody. I haven't done anything to hurt anybody. The young girls who are bought and sold into sexual slavery all over the world every day have not done anything to hurt anybody. They're victimized because they can be. And we're the only ones who can stop it. And we do that by stepping outside the comfort zone, because we all have them. And we have to take responsibility for people, all people, who are victims of hatred simply because they are who they are. I came here like this, black, female, and a dyke. Came here that way. And I'm happy about it. I'm glad. But nobody asked me if that's what I wanted. And if they had, and if I knew then what I know now, I'd say, oh yeah, yeah, I'll keep doing this. I like it. But I don't want the abuse, and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm done. I'm done. I've had it. I don't explain. People invite me to go. I had a woman that was not really a friend in Atlanta, but someone I had known, I'd met. She's a lawyer, partner in a big law firm downtown. And she wanted me to come and talk to her law partners. I said, why am I coming to talk to them? She says, well, you have this perspective. I said, don't y'all have any black partners? And she said, no. I said, this was last year, 2016. This is the kind of crap people used to say 40 years ago. We can't find any qualified. I know 3 or 4 judges and a whole bunch of lawyers in Atlanta. I said, if you can't find nobody qualified, I can have somebody at your office, 4 or 5 people, before the close of business. If you can't find them, I'll find them for you. But no, I'm not coming to talk to anybody or explain anything. We're from the same hometown. She went to Tulane. I went to University of Georgia. I think I'm a year or 2 older. And all of these things you claim not to know. Why not? It is no longer sufficient to claim ignorance of circumstances that imperil other people just because they may not imperil you. It's not acceptable because, and I don't know who said it first, but I repeat it often, if they can come for me, they can come for you. Okay? Nobody is safe if you're in a hated category, which means that we all are in this together. And Dr. King did say it. We'll either climb out of this hole together or we'll all perish together. And I ain't interested in perishing, to tell you the truth. That's the first thing I'm going to ask you to do. Step outside your comfort zone. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do, each of you, is do something good for somebody else. And that is not the same thing as stepping outside your comfort zone, I hope. Because we all do nice things for people. But I want you to be conscious about it. And I'm going to give you a couple examples. For those of you who listen to NPR radio, and I had just about quit. I don't listen to the news. About a month and a half ago, maybe, there was an interview with a woman who runs a food bank in a small town in one of the rural states. I don't remember which one. And the food bank was out of food. And the food bank was out of food, she said, because the people who had kept it going, who donated to it, were working class people, middle class, working class people, and those people were broke. Those people had become the beneficiaries of the food bank. She said, we have no food. So wherever you live, big town, small town, it doesn't matter, find the food bank and take them some food. And don't do it once, do it on a regular basis. People in this country are going hungry. And it's going to get worse because the fool, whose name I don't mention, when they get through killing all the programs that people who need that stuff rely on so that the wealthy can get these huge tax credits, there's going to be nowhere for people who need assistance to go. Middle class and working class people are in dire straits. They're not going to tell you that. And the news media is not going to tell you that, because my former profession, bunch of lily-livered cowards is what they are. And I was on good behavior. Have I used profanity? I haven't called anybody a dirty name. But the media is not telling us the truth about what is happening in our country. They're not telling us the truth. And the truth is, we're in trouble, people. We're in trouble. So do something to help somebody else. And I just used the food bank because when I heard that on the radio, that was one of the things I knew I could do. It's like and do it on a regular basis. And the church that I no longer go to, but they have a huge food bank. And so here, and they take the food and people come get it and no questions asked. And there are other things, but you find something that you can do, that you will do, not once or a couple of times when you don't have anything else to do. But make it a part of your life to do something for somebody else, to do something that helps somebody else. Because each of us has, at one time or another, needed help, and if you haven't, you're awfully lucky. I don't know that, as that old saying goes, nobody gets out alive. I don't know that any of us will ever get to a point where we don't need something from somebody else. Those of us in this room are probably lucky enough to know that we have somebody that we can call and say, I need something. But millions of people do not. There's nobody. So the food bank, the Meals on Wheels, the people who feed elderly, the shut-in, do something to help somebody else. And keep in mind that we are the ones who will have to help each other. We have to, and we have to look beyond our individual things, which means I can not just look at the fact that Black Lives Matter, and I'm not going to say that other thing because it's kind of petty and it diminishes a movement, but gay and lesbian, because I'm that, and women-centered things, because I'm that, and things that imperil people of color, because I'm that. But I also am a citizen of the world, and there are people in this world, and many of them, most of them, women, who are reviled and despised and hated and have terrible things done to them. Because the people can do it and they can get away with it. And so there are groups and organizations that you can find out information about, but they traffic. And it's not just over there. If you didn't know it, it's here now. Women and girls are trafficked in this country into sexual slavery every day in every part of this country, big cities and small cities. And this is happening on our watch, my sister friends. And it's up to us. Hate is alive and well. And as much as I wish that were not true, it's going to help me sell some books, so I suppose I can't complain too hard, but I also promise you that I would be happy to never sell another one if we could wake up tomorrow and it would all be gone, but that's not going to happen. So I enlist your help. I thank you for your kindness, for your attention, and for not being naked. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Y'all are good. You're good. I think there are time for questions. I hope there are time for questions, and I'm happy to answer them if I can. There's a mic someplace somebody has. The mic is there, and anybody who has a question over there.
So Penny, hi, Cheryl.
Hey, Cheryl.
I've been thinking a lot about symbols in this country, and I think I'm kind of in the minority on this, but I've been thinking about how symbols can be a distraction to the real work we need to do. So I'm thinking about the Confederate flag. I'm thinking about the Confederate monuments, those kinds of things that we're focusing on and building a lot of tension and hatred around. but I'm not sure it makes sense because there's so many other big problems going on and so many other kinds of hatred that is so systemic. Those are symbols, you know? If I thought tearing down a Confederate flag would change this country's heart and soul and make me less hated and make Black Lives Matter, I'd be the first one to tear one down. Climb the pole, tear it down. But I know I could take every Confederate flag out of this country and tear down every Confederate monument in Richmond, Virginia, and it won't make a bit of difference. So I'm wondering what you think of that.
I don't disagree with you, but to the extent that symbols feed a certain mindset, I think they're dangerous. I agree with you. If we took every Confederate flag flying over every state house and every monument, if we took them all down, would it change hearts and minds? No. But do their continued existence feed hearts and minds? Poison? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And so to that extent, if they weren't there, maybe a generation who's not familiar with what they signify, if they grow up not seeing it, it's perhaps one less thing. I don't know. Would I take energy away from some other stuff to go tear down some monuments? Probably not. But I guess I could look no further historically than what was true in Europe and Germany in particular, with the absolute banning of the swastika. It is absolutely banned. Does it mean there's no anti-Semitism? No. But it means you can't hang it on that. So to that extent, I think, yeah, there's value. And the fascists in Italy took down most of the fascist symbols, although the first time I was in Italy and I rode into the train station in Milan, and I almost had a heart attack, because when you go into that train station, there is the fascist symbol, and it was there, and I really, my breath stopped in my chest, and I had to ask somebody, why is that there? And their response was, so we don't ever forget. So, you know, I don't know if that helps you, Cheryl, but okay. Yes? One more question. I can have one more question. No more questions? Oh, there is a question.
Hi, my name is Renee. How do we explain the difference between the press not telling the truth and Trump saying that, I'm sorry, Voldemort?
Okay.
How do we tell the difference between the press not telling the truth and Voldemort saying that they're not telling the truth?
Well, my first response to that is, don't listen to anything Voldemort says. Okay? Don't. Assume that whatever comes out of his mouth is either a lie or demented. And when I say the press is not telling the truth, the media in this country used to be dogged in its pursuit of fact. When I was a reporter, if you didn't have quotes around a thing with somebody's name attached to it, in all likelihood, your editor wouldn't let it in the paper. Or when I was a radio reporter and a television reporter, if I did not say in that report that Mary Phillips said, couldn't use it. In print media, if you were attributing information to a person without using that person's name because it would get the person in trouble, you had to have 3 verifiable sources. And your editor or somebody went to those 3 sources to say, did you tell Mickelbury these things? Not for attribution, we just need to get it cleared up. That's how rigorous it was. When I say the press now isn't telling the truth, I don't mean that they're lying. I mean that they're not doing the due diligence. I mean that nobody is out now, and a part of that has to do with the fact that there aren't any reporters anymore, for crying out loud. There are very few newspapers anymore. But that the reporters are not out in America looking at what's going on. They don't know that people are starving to death, that people have no health, not only health insurance, access to health. Hospitals are closing, the small ones, the community hospitals. And so now, people might have to drive half a day to get to a medical facility that may not have the equipment necessary to keep them alive. And that's if they had the insurance to pay for it. That's what I mean, that the media is not doing its due diligence. And part of that was reflected in the fact that what's-his-name scared the crap out of him during the campaign, because he is notoriously litigious. He files suits. He never wins them, mind you. But a news organization that has to defend it spends millions of dollars in defense of its right to publish, and a lot of them, the New York Times might be the only thing standing because the fool that owns Amazon now owns the Washington Post, which is where I used to work, and there was a time when you couldn't back the Post down off anything. They don't have papers like that anymore. So the media is complicit to the extent that it doesn't do due diligence, but not to the extent that I think the major organizations lie. And Rachel Maddow did a report last night where she proved that information that was delivered to her had been forged. And the question is, that latest information that went to CNN that got reporters fired, if that had been forged. So if there are people forging information that media is using, and then somebody comes along saying, this is a lie, and it's proven that it's a lie, but it's a lie because it was forged in the first place, and that's deliberate. See, that's a whole other thing. That's another thing. That's a scary proposition. But don't ever believe anything he says. Anything that comes out of his mouth is a lie. Either it's that, or it's a result of a deranged mind. Thank you all. Thank you, Mary.